Picture a winter night on the outskirts of Moscow. Frost on the sidewalks, traffic thinning, tower blocks glowing in that particular orange haze you only get in big cities that never really sleep. And then, without warning, the light disappears. Whole districts flicker, then fail. Stairwells go dark. Elevators freeze mid-journey. Street lamps that once drew neat lines down long avenues vanish, leaving only the white glare of passing headlights and the blue halos of phone screens as people step out onto balconies to ask the same question: what just happened? Officially, it is a line accident. Unofficially, people can hear the thud of distant air defenses, watch videos of interceptors streaking up from the tree line, and scroll through Telegram channels showing grainy footage of drones gliding over forests on the approach to the capital. For a few hours, the capital of a nuclear power looks like any other city under attack. Uncertain, anxious, and very suddenly aware that someone else has reach over them. Quick pause before we dive in. If you want more long-form breakdowns that connect frontline tactics to big strategic shifts, take a second to like this video and tell us in the comments what you want the next deep dive to cover. More on Ukraine's drone war, NATO doctrine, or a different conflict entirely. And as you watch, let us know. Is turning Moscow into a target a stroke of strategic genius, a dangerous escalation, or both? This was not Ukraine's first strike inside Russia, and it was not the last. But something changed over the past year. The pattern. What began as occasional long-range stabs at fuel depots and air bases has evolved into a campaign aimed at Russia's economic bloodstream oil refineries, export terminals, power substations, and transport hubs hundreds of kilometers from the front. In late 2024 and through 2025, Ukrainian long-range drones repeatedly hit major refineries deep inside Russia, Yaroslavl in the northeast, Tuapse on the Black Sea, and others dotted across the map with documented shutdowns, fires, and weeks of reduced output. Energy analysts and independent researchers now estimate that a significant chunk of Russia's refining capacity has been taken offline, at least temporarily. On the ground, that translates into fuel rerouted from civilian markets to the military, export volumes disrupted, insurance costs and shipping risks spiking for tankers leaving Russian ports. For years, Moscow tried to make Ukraine feel that nowhere was safe. Power grids hit, cities plunged into darkness, infrastructure turned into legitimate targets. Now, Ukraine is sending back the same message, but in a way that Russia never expected. With home-built drones produced in growing numbers and flown by crews who have turned improvisation into doctrine. Turning Moscow into a de facto front line does not mean leveling the city. It means proving over and over that distance no longer guarantees safety. Ukraine's long-range drone campaign has a few recurring ingredients: range and accuracy, purpose-built one-way attack drones, and converted commercial airframes guided by satellite navigation and sometimes aided by onboard terrain or image matching, can reach up to 1,500 kilometers into Russian territory with enough precision to hit refinery units, storage tanks, and transformer yards. Volume and persistence. Instead of 1 or 2 drones, Russia now routinely reports tens or even over 100 inbound UAVs in a single night, forcing its air defense system to engage over vast areas and at multiple altitudes. Target choice. Rather than attacking purely symbolic landmarks, the focus is on nodes that move power and fuel places, where a small explosion has an outsized impact on trains, trucks, ships, and jets days later. The blackout episodes around Moscow suburbs losing power, while air defenses are reportedly engaging large salvos of drones, fit this logic perfectly. They show that high-value nodes exist within reach. Russian defenses cannot intercept everything, and even unsuccessful or partially successful attacks can force shutdowns as a precaution. From Kiev's point of view, success is not measured in dramatic explosions on television. While long-range strikes grab headlines, Ukraine's drone revolution was forged much closer to the front. Units like the 12th Azov Brigade's Unmanned Systems Battalion, The one that has been profiled for its massive FPV and loitering drone inventory represent the tactical laboratory that made the strategic Moscow campaign possible. Their approach is built around a few ideas. Treat the air above the battlefield as an operating system. Constant recon drones map trenches, antennas, trucks, and movement patterns. FPV drones and small loitering munitions act as the apps that delete specific targets. A relay antenna here, an ammo truck there. Build a buffer zone of machines between Russian infantry and Ukrainian positions, so humans fight only after drones have already stripped away the enemy's eyes, radios, and logistics. Use iteration as a weapon. Test new drone types, routes, payloads. Discard what doesn't work. Mass produce what does. The Seth drone, a compact loitering munition with a silhouette reminiscent of Iranian Shahed designs, but electrically powered and optimized for short-range, brigade-level strikes, is a clear example. It is meant to slip 30 to 40 kilometers into the enemy's rear, hit a truck, a gun, or a command post, and vanish from the sky before defenders even adjust. This same logic scales upward in the long-range campaign. Replace the trench line with Russian territory as a whole. Replace the 2-kilometer buffer with hundreds of kilometers of airspace. Replace the logistics truck outside a village with an entire refinery or power node near Moscow. The doctrine is the same. Use cheap, networked machines to make the enemy's expensive systems feel permanently exposed and late. To understand why NATO officers are stunned, you have to look at the math. Russia has invested for decades in layered air defenses around Moscow, long-range systems like S-400s, medium and short-range SAMs, and dense radar coverage. These can be very effective against fast, high-flying targets, such as cruise missiles or aircraft. But now they're being asked to intercept slow, small radar cross-section drones, flying low, often masking behind terrain, arriving in swarms large enough to saturate local defenses. Every time Russia fires a sophisticated interceptor missile, costing hundreds of thousands, even millions of dollars at a drone that might cost tens of thousands or less, that exchange rate hurts. Multiply that by dozens of drones per night, over many months, and the economics tilt heavily toward the attacker. Analysts tracking the refinery war note that even limited physical damage can force safety shutdowns and repairs. Doing so, insurance premiums on shipping and infrastructure rise, and the psychological effect on industry and investors accumulates. From NATO's perspective, this is a rehearsal for their own vulnerabilities. How do you defend sprawling energy and transport networks from persistent long-range drones without bankrupting yourself on interceptors? How do you harden critical nodes without turning your entire economy into a fortress? And what happens when your own capital starts to feel like a frontline target, the way Moscow now does? Ukraine is not just improvising, it is institutionalizing. In 2024, Kyiv formally created a separate branch for unmanned systems, land, air, and maritime, tasked with standardizing training, scaling production, and turning frontline innovation into national doctrine. That means drone battalions are no longer ad hoc experiments. They are part of the force structure. Lessons from units like Azov are codified into manuals, courses, and procurement. Long-range strike concepts and tactical FPV tactics feed the same doctrine pipeline. NATO states are watching this unfold in real time. Western think tanks and defense institutions increasingly describe Ukraine as a live laboratory for drone warfare, with specific studies highlighting that a majority of visually confirmed Russian equipment losses now come from drones rather than traditional artillery or tank fire. For alliance planners, the shocks are several. Capitals and deep rear areas are no longer safe in a conflict between advanced states. Cheap, domestically produced drones can impose costs comparable to high-end missiles. So, classic air defense concepts must be rewritten to handle saturation attacks by low-end platforms. In fact, militaries that do not build their own unmanned forces risk being doctrinally a generation behind. Some NATO members are already moving to create dedicated drone commands, boost production of small unmanned systems, and integrate counter-drone measures into everything from base defense to fleet protection. But few, if any, are as far along in combat-driven adaptation as Ukraine, which is precisely why they are stunned by how quickly Kyiv has managed to push the fight onto Moscow's doorstep. None of this means Russia is helpless. Moscow is hardening substations, deploying more short-range air defenses around key sites, and stepping up efforts to detect and strike Ukrainian drone factories and launch teams. It is also continuing its own mass strikes against Ukrainian infrastructure, trying to keep Kyiv on the defensive. But even as Russia patches, one fact now hangs over the Kremlin. The illusion of strategic depth has been punctured. Refinery fires hundreds of kilometers from the front. Airports near Moscow restricting traffic after drone alerts. Suburbs losing power, while the government insists everything is under control. That is what turning Moscow into a front line really means. Not daily bombardment, but a permanent sense that the war can arrive uninvited, at night, overhead. Ukraine's aim is not to win with one spectacular raid. It is to make the cost of continuing the war compound inside Russia itself, politically, economically, and psychologically, while NATO quietly ensures Ukraine has the drones, munitions, and air defenses to keep this pressure going. What this drone strategy has done is redraw the mental map of the conflict. Ukraine is no longer just defending trenches. It is reaching into the infrastructure that powers the war against it. Moscow is no longer just a distant command node. It is a place where people check the sky and listen for air defenses the way Ukrainians have for years. And NATO is no longer just counting tanks and jets. It is counting circuit boards, propellers, software update, and interception costs. How Ukraine's new drone strategy turned Moscow into a front line is not a slogan. It is a description of a shift every major power now has to plan for. If war can reach a capital with home-built drones and improvised guidance, strategic depth becomes something you have to earn every single night, not something geography gives you by default. And that is why NATO is stunned, not just by what Kyiv has hit, but by how fast it has learned to hit it. If you've watched this far, thank you. Leave a like if this kind of in-depth analysis is useful, and tell us in the comments what you want the next video to explore. More on Ukraine's unmanned forces, how Russia is adapting, or how NATO is rewriting its own playbooks. Most importantly, what do you think? Has Ukraine found a sustainable way to pressure Moscow? Or is this a dangerous escalation that could redraw the rules for everyone?